What's going on, everybody? Good afternoon. And we haven't had a discussion about Geno Smith on this video for like 3 hours, which is way too long. We got to have another one because if you're in the Seahawks fandom right now, if you're making Seahawks videos on YouTube and you're not talking about Geno Smith at all hours of the day, you don't have your finger on the pulse of the fan base because that's all the fan base really wants to talk about right now. We talk about Geno Smith a lot. And look, he's the starting quarterback. He should be talked about a lot. I think every team talks about their starting quarterback a lot. But it's really the nature of those conversations, right? It's the way people talk about him that has gotten to this point where, I mean, the conversations are getting more and more useless because both sides are digging in pretty hard. And they've gotten a lot more toxic, too. And I contribute to that toxicity sometimes. I can't lie. I can't be dishonest about this. I'm annoyed by how this fan base chooses to react to things because it's moments like this where we as a Seahawks fan base, as a group of people, can act like children and overreact to every little thing that happens and have this completely context drained understanding of the game and demand things based on that understanding, or we can actually try to see through it, or we can actually try to get to the bottom of things and really understand what is wrong and what needs to be improved if we want this to go right in the future. And I think that's very clearly the kind of the divide there. I think that's clearly the divide because when if you try to have a discussion with some violently anti-Geno person in the Seahawks fan base, all you get are one of two things. You get either box score stats or win-loss record in certain situations that honestly seem pretty arbitrary to me. But that's all you really get. And I'm just annoyed at you try to talk about Geno Smith, and then you get a bunch of people posting box score stats like this is secret information. And it's like this isn't a discussion anymore. This is just you posting numbers that really don't mean all that much when you're trying to determine how good or how bad or how great or how terrible something is in this league. Okay? Like, watch the games. Try to understand what you're looking at, you know? I'm sorry. I sometimes get a little bit out of pocket when I talk about this Geno stuff, but I get fed up with it a little bit because I don't think there's an attempt to even understand what's really going on here by a lot of fans. So in this video, we're going to talk about Geno Smith, and in order to talk about Geno Smith, to kind of try to introduce this, to try to get people to understand, I'm going to talk about a guy who I think is basically the same as Geno Smith in this way. And what I mean by that is he is another quarterback who is completely disrespected and unfairly hated by his own fans. And just on a human level, that's not right, right? If a team has a player that is good, it's one thing if fans of other teams say he's not good or he's overrated or he's bad, but his own fans should be able to see through it, right? Because you're watching the games. So Dak Prescott's in that same boat. Dak Prescott is clearly a good and very capable quarterback. In fact, I think he's a very good, maybe even great quarterback that is not playing that well right now. And if you go on Cowboys fans' videos right now and you go on Cowboys Twitter, you will see comment after comment after comment after comment of Cowboys fans swearing that Dak Prescott needs to be benched. Now, he's benched now because he's hurt, but be benched for performance, that he's a below average starting quarterback in this league, that he's a backup quarterback, that he shouldn't even be a starter in this league. Just very, very ignorant things to say, very foolish things to say, things that are clearly not true. This is his own fan base doing it. And let's take a look at this. And keep in mind, Cowboys fans, a big chunk of them have had this anti, I'll call it a Dak hatred going even as recently as last year or this year. This isn't something that just came up because of this one season. Like, it's been going on for years. So look at this. Look at what's going on here with Dak Prescott. All right, 2023, Dak Prescott leads the league in touchdown passes, 36. He's got 9 interceptions. He's got 4,500 passing yards, almost 70% completion. Like, this is the box score of an MVP caliber quarterback, is it not? And by the way, I mean that literally. Go look at his awards for 2023. Pro Bowl, All-Pro second team, second place in the MVP voting behind Lamar Jackson, top 5 in Offensive Player of the Year. So, Dak Prescott was not only one of the best quarterbacks in the league in 2023, if you buy MVP voting and All-Pro voting, he was the second best. Literally the second best. So, this is a guy who's clearly really good potentially, and people in his fan base hate him. Again, they think he's a backup level quarterback, even though he almost won MVP last year. And that's where I draw this comparison, because he's getting this ridiculous, absurd hatred from his own fan base, well beyond what any legitimate criticism of Dak Prescott could be. But look at what's going on this year. Look at what's going on in 2024. Now, Dak's hurt now, so he's not going to get to build on these numbers for a while, but look at pretty much everything. Completion percentage is down 5%. Yards are down significantly. Touchdowns are way down. His touchdown interception ratio actually is very close to Geno's. In fact, if you looked at these numbers, you'd probably come to the conclusion that him and Geno have a good amount in common. Geno's got more yards, higher completion percentage, and he's done a little more rushing, but Dak doesn't have the 2 interceptions. So it's actually very similar. So how did this happen? And this is what people need to figure out how to answer here. How did this happen? How did Dak Prescott go from finishing second in MVP voting last year? 1 year later, he's playing like a guy who is not even an above average starter. If you look at the box score, right? The box score indicates this is a very mediocre quarterback. This is a quarterback who deserves to have a starting job in the league by virtue of the fact that he's top 32, but is he top 15? Is he top 20? Maybe, maybe not. Probably you'd say not when you consider the fact that his team isn't winning, right? Did Dak Prescott radically change from 2023 to 2024? Is he a different player now? No. He's not. He wasn't 35 last year. He was 30. Age should not be a big factor here. So what happened? What happened is pretty simple. The Dallas Cowboys lost, I think, 3 starters on their offensive line. It was at least 2, but it may have been 3. And they lost their running back, and they didn't replace any of those guys with anything that they had any confidence in. They replaced Tony Pollard with Zeke Elliott. They replaced their lost offensive linemen with rookies. And their lost offensive linemen were good players. Those were good players that they replaced with spare parts and unknown rookies. And it's now working. And they didn't do anything to improve his receiver core, so his receiver core actually went backwards because Brandon Cooks has been hurt all year. So now you have a quarterback who almost won MVP last year with 1 elite receiver, a pretty decent tight end, and absolutely nothing else. He's got no offensive line, no running game, no running backs with any real skill. He's got CD and Ferguson, and that's kind of it. Even Zach Martin is not playing good football anymore on the offensive line for the Cowboys. So look at how stark the difference is. He's a completely different player. Last year, he was a unarguable top 3 quarterback. This year, is he top 20? Maybe. Right? If you put him in a list, maybe he'd make the top 20. So, when you look at box scores, you're looking at an individual stats, but quite often, I think you can... do I have to explain this? How what is going on around the quarterback is influencing whether or not he can put up those big box score numbers, right? Like, did he really just age 10 years in one off season? No, the situation around him completely broke down, and he went from being elite to average at best. So when you're looking at this Seahawks team, And you're seeing things like, just as a few examples, the team having the second most penalties on offense in the league, right? Mostly holdings. We love to hold. We have a lot of holdings. We have a lot of false starts. We have the 46th most penalties in the league on offense. By the way, NFL high for the overall team. When you're looking at something like Geno Smith facing 93 pressures in 9 games that were charted as originally blocked, which means, by the way, the player is actually blocked initially and everything's good, and then the player just gets whipped because he can't hold up instantly. Like, that's what this means. More than 10 times a game, there's a play where the defense playing the Seahawks gets pressure within 2.5 seconds, even though the play was initially blocked up. More than 10 times a game, people, this is happening. When you're seeing something like that, when you're seeing something like this, the Seahawks need to gain an average of 8.9 yards on third down this season. That would be the longest third down distance for a single season since at least 1980. The longest. We are literally the worst offense in NFL history at getting manageable third downs. Literally the worst. And then you're looking at something like, look at this longer post by Nemhauser. I think he made this last night, talking about Geno Smith, talking about how good he is when he's throwing from a clean pocket. He's got an elite PFF grade when passing from a clean pocket. QB rating of almost 109. And then you see how much things fall off, how bad things get when he's under pressure. And then you're seeing how much more he's under pressure than everybody else. Jared Goff literally gets pressured half as often as Geno. You look at all these things, and how can you not be understanding why this stuff occasionally will happen? It seems very common sense to me, right? It seems very common sense to me. And I don't know how people miss this. It's not hard. Like, I just posted a bunch of numbers, right? I just went through a bunch of stats. But you just watch the games. If you watch the games, you will not see any quarterback be supported less than Geno Smith is being supported right at this moment. And look, that's not all the team's fault. I'm not faulting Schneider for all of it, because injuries happen, and that's not Schneider's fault if DK misses a couple games. Like, that's not anything that Schneider did that we need to hold him to task for. But right now, he is not being supported. And I can find more evidence just like this all over the place. You could take a look at how often Geno Smith has been pressured this season. He leads the league in times pressured, even though his time to throw is still within line with pretty much all the quarterbacks in the league. Pretty normal amount. He's not holding on to the ball for 3 years, and that's why he keeps getting pressured. But I don't need to. Like, at a certain point, you get to a pretty clear picture of how bad a job you're doing supporting that quarterback. And the reason why I talk about this so much and why I get so upset about it is I don't want to be like Cowboys fans. I don't want to be that fan base that is ungrateful and doesn't try to understand things and doesn't try to actually dig into stuff and understand why it's happening. I don't want to be the fan base that has a bunch of fans that come out after that game on Sunday and go, oh, Geno threw 3 interceptions. Like, that means something, like that necessarily means anything about Geno. Okay? That's why I get the way that I get about this conversation. Because I want to be the fan base of fans who get it. I want to be in a fan base of fans who will look at a situation like that and go, man, this quarterback is doing everything he can. I wish this team would do a little better job of getting him some help, helping him out here. Instead of thinking that a quarterback who got sacked, 68 times and threw 20 interceptions last year is going to go in there and anything's going to be better. So that's why I get the way that I get about it. These other fan bases, I think they have a pretty good picture of their franchise quarterback, or they overrate their quarterback. Like Niners fans who think Brock Purdy's a top 3 quarterback. We know he's not. He's obviously not, but some Niners fans think that. And they're fans of his. That makes sense. They should probably overrate their players. Sometimes that's part of what being a fan is. But the fact that we have a fan base that tries to run players like Geno Smith and DK Metcalf out of town when they're 2 of our best, if not our best players, and they're doing pretty much everything they can to try to help this team win doesn't sit well with me, and I push back against it. So I don't know if this is going to change anybody's mind. I don't know if this is going to sway anybody, because this Geno thing has gotten pretty extreme in this fan base. And look, I am open to the possibility of this team just not being ready for Geno Smith right now, and them needing to maybe take a step back with a bad quarterback for a little while so they can flush everything, and by the time they get good again, maybe Geno will have been too old anyway. Like, that's at least arguable. That's defensible. But I don't want to be that fan base that complains about stuff that doesn't need to be complained about. And it feels like right now we are. We're like the Cowboys. That's why I make the Dak Prescott comparison, because I promise you, it probably sounds weird to a lot of you looking at what Dak did last year, but a shockingly big contingent of that Cowboys fan base think that he's, like, bad. Okay? And to me, there's not much of a difference between Seahawks fans that think that Geno is bad and Cowboys fans that think Dak is bad. You don't understand how a game of football comes together. How a quarterback needs to be supported by the things around him, or else he doesn't have a chance. He doesn't need to be lifted up by these things. I'm not asking this team to come in and lift him up. But if you don't support him, how is he going to lift you up? And again, when you look at something like what Nemhauser posted, when he's got this hyper elite production from when passing from a clean pocket, why would you not want more of that as a fan? Why would you not want to say, okay, I want more clean pockets for Geno Smith where he's one of the best QBs in the league, legitimately? Like, in terms of passer rating, in terms of Pro Football Focus grade, whatever you want to use, legitimately elite when he's passing from a clean pocket. How is the response to that not, well, we better do everything we can to get him as many clean pockets as possible? Somehow the response is, no, I want to put Sam Howell in the game, who has already proven that he cannot play well when he's behind a bad offensive line, because he got sacked like 70 times and threw over 20 interceptions in, I don't even think it was a full season in Washington. So that's the part I'm trying to figure out here. That's the part that I just have to look at and go, we need to be smarter right now, especially right now when the team is in a little bit of a delicate spot here. Okay? And unless you want to be going 2-15 every year because you built your offense around Jake Bobo as your number one receiver, and maybe you're thinking you're going to be cool with that because he has a funny name, but you're probably not going to be cool with it when it's actually happening. So let's try to actually keep our good players and build around them a little bit instead of trying to push all the good players out. Just a thought.